What's up, YouTube watchers? My name is JT, and I have multiple sclerosis. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I slur really bad. When MS first showed itself, I noticed that my face drooped hardcore. So I looked around on YouTube and I found a video. They're talking about speech and your vocal cords. Now, like I said, this video is from National MS Society, and let's get into that.
Hello, I'm Kate Milliken and welcome to MS Learn Online. There are many symptoms associated with multiple sclerosis, and for some, this may include speech disorders. Although speech disorders are not one of the most familiar symptoms in MS, they are fairly common. To help us better understand the speech disorders that can occur in MS and what can be done about them, we are joined by Patricia Bednarek. Ms. Bednarek is a speech-language pathologist at the University of Pittsburgh MS Center. Welcome to MS Learn Online.
Thank you very much, Kate.
So Pat, why don't we start with what causes speech disorders in MS?
Well, the things that cause speech problems in MS are the same types of things that cause the physical problems in MS, and that is lesions in the brain, and especially lesions in
I have lesions on my brain, so I learned here that that's speech is what it's from.
the brainstem area.
What types of speech disorders are there out there, and what are some of the symptoms associated with those types of speech disorders?
Usually when we look at MS, we're looking at two primary types of speech disorders. We're looking at dysarthria, and we're looking at something called dysphonia.
Can you give a definition of each?
Sure. Dysarthria is a group of motor speech disorders, and it is characterized by changes in respiration, phonation, resonance, articulation, prosody.
I have a problem articulating.
Stress, emphasis, those kinds of things on words. So in other words, it's not just tongue weakness. Many times dysarthria sounds like slurred speech.
There we go.
As a speech pathologist, what we look at is it just tongue weakness, which is not dysarthria, versus a combination of is the person able to move their lips, their tongue, are they breathing correctly, those sorts of things. So it has to be a collection of problems.
And the dysphonia?
The dysphonia is a disorder of voice, and that has to do also with respiration, but it also has to do with vibration of the vocal cords to produce sound. So in MS, a lot of times there may be difficulty using the voice, making the voice go, or in some cases the voice may be totally absent where the person can only whisper.
You know what? I used to be in a band, a heavy metal band, and it was like screaming and singing, just a combination, kind of like a new metal band. But I noticed I sing around the house some, and when I sing, I have no problems at all. Like I can sing and there's no slurring. So I don't know. I guess I don't have any problem with the vocal cords, but I sing from the diaphragm, so it goes up and it goes through your vocal cords. But I have no problem singing. It's just talking.
One harder to treat therapeutically than the other in terms of dysphonia?
No, not necessarily. They tend to coexist together. And so in speech pathology, you know, we certainly see them both, and we treat them usually both concurrently.
How are these speech disorders diagnosed in MS?
Well, you would come to a speech-language pathologist. And what we would do is we would start out doing a comprehensive medical history. And that would include some personal questions that people are often surprised that we might ask. So I will ask a lot about somebody's medical background, their general health history. I will ask a lot about medications, much to people's surprise, because medications can have an effect on how the voice sounds, particularly any medications that may dry out the mouth, medications that
I have a problem with dry mouth, but it is from low sodium. I don't know if it has anything also to do with my speech, no, but yeah, I have low sodium and dry mouth, and when that happens, I have to go to the hospital. They have to put an IV in me. They might admit me for a day or two.
It may involve anything used to treat spasticity. May have an impact on speech or voice. So I look at those very carefully. I'm also going to look at occupation because of what are the demands of the voice or what are the demands of speaking. I'm going to look at educational history. I'm going to look at family history to see are there other problems. You know, one of the things when we do a history is, not everything is because of MS. So, I'm always looking for everything, not just those things related to MS. I'm also going to be checking for any kind of cultural sensitivity issues because, again, during the evaluation and particularly during the treatment phase, it's important for the clinician to be sensitive to any particular cultural issues. Anytime you're working around the mouth and working inside the mouth, it's a very sensitive, psychologically sensitive area for a lot of people.
I would like to go get, I mean, I don't know if it costs money at the National MS Society for them to evaluate a person, but I would like to go there or wherever she's talking about and get an evaluation done.
And so it's always good to be aware of those kinds of things as a clinician.
And it's really interesting to think that, it could be, all those issues could kind of be starting at the source, source of the medicine or whatever else.
Right, right.
What can be done to help speech disorders?
There are many things that can be done. If someone is diagnosed with a speech problem, usually what we will do is again, depending on the assessment, we can do a lot of exercises. So there may be exercises involving strengthening of the muscles of speech or range of motion of the
That's what
muscles
I
of
need.
speech. We may use biofeedback. We may use surgery in some cases,
Oh,
prosthetic
Lord.
devices. For example, in the case where somebody has a resonance problem, resonance meaning hypo or hyper nasality. Many times, if the soft palate, the uvula that hangs down in the back of your throat, that's attached to this, that's part of the soft palate. If that is hanging down too low, people sound like they're talking through their nose.
don't
And
have that
you can
problem.
actually put in an artificial lift that will help lift that up
That's
so that they
crazy.
can have a normal sounding speaking voice. So sometimes prosthetic devices are important. Sometimes medicines can be used, such as baclofen or Botox.
More medicines, more medicines. I mean, come on, man. I'd rather just go around slurring all the time, but taking more medicine. I take more medication. I tell you that.
And then if somebody's speech is very, very involved and it is very difficult for them to communicate, and again, one of the things that I look at is what I want to know as a clinician is if somebody has an emergency situation, are they able to communicate well enough to make themselves understood to a stranger? We may recommend some type of supplemental communication device, such as an augmentative or alternative means of communication. So maybe a board or a book that they point to with pictures or letters. Maybe in severe cases, it may be one of those computerized speaking devices. But again, we
Thank
always
God I
prefer
don't
to
need
use the human voice because there's really no substitute for that. And sometimes we use a combination of those things. Because again, you have issues of fatigue and things like that. And sometimes
Yeah.
there's just strategy use. We also use vocal rest.
I know that this is a question just from your personal experience, and you can't make a blanket hypothesis statement on this, but if somebody has been living with MS for a long time and had speech problems for a while, is that a harder challenge for you than someone who instantly has a problem and comes to you for immediate rehab? Does time make a difference?
No, not necessarily, because the goal is basically the same, is to kind of look at what you can improve and maybe supplement what you can't. I think it's important for people to have realistic expectations of treatment. You know, they need to really realize that, that these problems are caused by lesions, and that I cannot fix the lesion, I cannot make it go away as much as I'd like to. But we certainly can do things to improve the ability to functionally communicate, and that's what the goal is. And when we talk about goals in therapy, a very important thing is I want to know what is the person's goal for their communication. It's not what I think they should be doing. What I want to know is what's important to you.
I certainly understand, having spoken to people with MS, having MS myself, the frustrations people experience in terms of having symptoms that won't go away. So I'm curious from your perspective how, when you work with people with speech disorders, how you give them faith. How do you keep them revved up if process is slow?
Okay, what I like to focus on is I know that the medications that are out there now, I've seen how well people have done on them so far. And I know that what we have now is not the end of treatment, because there are better treatments that are coming down the road for people with MS. My goal
They
as a
keep saying
clinician
that.
is to keep people going and to keep them active until the next best thing comes along.
Thank you, Pat. Really appreciate you helping us better understand speech disorders.
My pleasure.
Pat will be joining us again to discuss another issue that some people with MS experience, swallowing problems. We look forward to seeing you then. This is Kate Milliken for MS Learn Online.
That was a very informative video. I learned a lot. And if you did too, like and subscribe. I'm out.